Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait another 30 seconds or so. It normally takes a little while once we open the webinar for participants to be able to join us. So bear with us for just a little bit longer while we get all of our audience members connected, and we'll get started. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, and welcome to our expert panel on the future of work. My name's Lara Carton. I'm the Director of Social Innovation and the Associate Vice President for our University Operations in Victoria. I'd like to start today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that we're meeting on across Australia. In Melbourne, where I am today, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I encourage you to consider and acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of where you are working from, whether that's home or your office today. Today's panel discussion forms part of the annual Festival of Change hosted by CQUniversity, and it's focused on social impact in education, in change-making activities in our communities, and as we are today, expert sessions highlighting areas of current and future focus for us as a university, for our students and our communities. Our discussion today will both inform you, our audience, and also hopefully spark ideas for you. But importantly, it will inform our university employability strategy and add to our body of knowledge about the challenges facing employers and broad sectors and the role of universities and our graduates in meeting future workforce needs. Our panel today comprises three experts representing agriculture, accounting and energy sectors, a diverse field of sectors, and I can imagine today we're going to hear from a diverse range of priorities and points of view. We're very fortunate to have our panellists join us today. I know that they have all had to find time to fit this into their schedule, and we're very grateful that they've been able to join us. So I'd like to welcome, and in a moment I'll invite them to introduce themselves a little more broadly, but I'd like to welcome Kim Cassidy, Principal Strategic Workforce Capacity Advisor at Energy Queensland, Professor Ruth Nettle, Deputy Chair of the National Agricultural Labour Advisory Committee for the Federal Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, and also Group Lead for the Rural Innovation Research Group at the University of Melbourne, and Anthony Tachi, Careers Engagement Lead at Chartered Accountants for Australia and New Zealand. So let's get started. Kim, I'm going to start with you. First of all, could you give a little bit more of a detailed explanation of your role and the role of Energy Queensland, and start by telling us maybe two of the most pressing issues that your industry is experiencing at the moment.
Thanks, Lara, and hello everybody. So my role at Energy Queensland, as Lara mentioned, is the Principal Advisor Strategic Workforce Capability. And what that role entails is there's a couple of kind of portfolios that are attached to that. First and foremost is working with the organisation to understand what are the workforce capability needs, so the skills and capabilities needed both now and in the future, and what are the gaps and risks and challenges associated with those needs, and what are the particular actions that we need to put in place in order to have the capability to be relevant and meet those future needs from an operational perspective. Additionally to that, or coupled with that as well, I do look after our graduate development program. It's a key talent program. It's a key pipeline into these capabilities we do need as an industry and an organisation. So I also manage that along with the workforce capability piece. Probably a little bit more about Energy Queensland. You might be more familiar with Ergon Energy or Energex or even potentially Eureka. Energy Queensland is sort of our parent company of our electricity distribution networks across Queensland, which is Ergon Energy Network and Energex. in the southeast corner. Additionally, we also have a unregulated business that's attached to that is Eureka, who operate in the more commercial markets for energy supply or energy pipeline activities. So for us as an organisation and also more broadly as an industry, there are some key challenges that are not only relevant for us, but in conversations across Australia and also internationally. The biggest challenge is in around a lot of the technology changes and the way in which we as an industry produce, distribute and maintain electricity supply to consumers, both that be the household consumer and also at a business or major customer level as mining. So there's a few key elements that are coming along with that. There's a push from a regulatory perspective and a government perspective and also a social perspective to move towards more clean ways in which we source and create and distribute energy. And then additionally, which I don't think is indifferent to many other industries, is the technology changes that are happening in the way in which we do work on a day-to-day basis around automation, augmentation of work, but also that need to have a sort of digital literacy in all the types of roles that we have within our organisation. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that, but I don't want to. I know you said a quick couple of sentences, so I'll stop there for the moment, Lara.
No, that was a fantastic start and setting the scene on both those social, environmental and technological challenges, I think is where our conversation will be heading in the future. So I look forward to coming back to that. Anthony, I'm going to ask you the same question. Can you tell us a little bit about your role within the organisation and maybe one or two of the big challenges facing you at the moment?
Thank you very much indeed, Lara, and good morning to everyone on the call today. Absolute pleasure to be here. So as Lara mentioned, I'm Anthony Tachi, and my role at Chartered Accountants Australia New Zealand is the Careers Engagement Lead. And what that involves is my team are involved in working with amazing students like yourselves on the call and really helping you sort of consider actually what does a career in accounting look like. We know there's some massive misconceptions around accountants. They tend to be maybe white middle-aged males in brown suits who will just look at spreadsheets all day, which is so far from the actual truth around the amazing sort of diverse type of work that accounting professionals get involved in. So we work with students, we also work with academics, career advisors and different employers, all around how can we sort of showcase the profession, how can we help have a voice around what are those skills that the future finance professional needs, and how can I connect talented students to amazing graduate roles, because there is a breadth out there apart from just the big four accountancy firms, so much more, and it's like how do we join the dots there and showcase what's available. So in terms of who are Chartered Accountants Australia New Zealand, we are one of the sort of membership bodies for the profession. We've got around about 128,000 members across Australia and New Zealand, but obviously global opportunities there. And it all just indicates that if you're looking to go through that profession, let's say become an auditor, a finance professional, having that CA designation is what we are. So speaking for the profession, thinking what are some of those key challenges that we're seeing, I think it's absolutely been touched upon here, that technological change. And everyone's thinking, what is the future role of an accountant if we're there and we've got automation, we've got bots, it takes away from some of that, in my eyes, that lower level skills that accountants would have been involved in, such as bookkeeping, etc. So that's really shifting the concept as to what are those core skills that future accountant requires, and we'll absolutely touch upon that sort of later on in the call. And I think the other sort of issue that we are facing at the moment is also just looking at the talent pool within Australia. Obviously, the impact of COVID has meant, in the past, you see lots of individuals coming from overseas on secondment, that really great sort of build of international talent. That's drying up at the second, with borders being closed, which has mean there's definitely a squeeze on how to attract, great talent, leading to that ongoing piece around that war for attention across our different business areas. How do we ensure people stay with us as opposed to moving? But we'll touch upon that later on. Thank you very much, Laura. Looking forward to the discussion.
Marvellous, thanks, Anthony. I think you're right, that competition for good talent, particularly at a graduate level, is something that we're well aware of. And I imagine, Ruth, in looking at the very, very broad agricultural sector, and obviously a sector that's been in the media a lot during COVID due to some of the pressures around getting those short-term or casual workforces into the country, love to hear a little bit more about your role and some of the challenges that you see facing the sector at the moment.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lara. And yes, it's amazing the similarities between different sectors, I think you'll find from what I say. Just firstly, I suppose on the panel today, I'm wearing a few different hats. So I am a researcher and academic doing teaching as well at the University of Melbourne in the agriculture and veterinary faculty. One of the key areas of research and teaching relate to the people and change in the agricultural sector. And so that is specifically the way or the change in the social organisation of farming systems and the changes and disruptions around the agri-food system as well. Also the advisors and the graduates that come out of universities in terms of their role in the agri-food sector. So I have that research and teaching hat. I teach human resource management in some of our programs as well. And I suppose it's that history of looking at these changes and challenges and supporting the sector in what they do about them that led me to be selected on the federal government's National Agricultural Labour and Advisory Committee. And last year, 2020, all through lockdown in Melbourne, we conducted 300 consultations across Australia around the agricultural workforce and the agri-food system workforce. We received 117 submissions from various different organisations, and we produced a national strategy for the agricultural workforce. We can share that link if Lara, if that's of interest to people as well. And so it really hit on the challenges for the sector. And really they're reflected in exactly what Kim and Anthony have said. I suppose a key issue that the agri-food system sort of faces is multiple disruptions. That's climate change, the way the food system and food preferences are changing, all the debates about the future of food and agriculture and coping and adapting to climate change has significant effects around the people and the workforce. And so generally that challenge is keeping people at the centre of understanding the change and the adaptation and building the capability of the people in that context. And so I think that's a key challenge, that disruption that's happening across all sectors. And keeping people at the centre of the strategies and thinking in addressing those issues. But what's really interesting, and you mentioned, Lara, I suppose if I asked the audience about, what do you think about agri-food careers and the type of jobs and what's really out there, you'd probably say to me, oh, it's all low-paid, low-skilled, overseas workers working in seasonal harvest, because really that's all often you do hear about in the media. And I suppose what we found in our work with the strategy and what people working in the sector know is the massive diversity of jobs and careers and career pathways, from science through to business, through to operations, to accounting, and also working on new energy solutions. Like the agri-food sector and the system is multidisciplinary, and it is multidimensional in terms of jobs and careers. And what we're finding is, particularly if I just focus on the farm level, is there is expansion of the size of farms in many instances. And when you look at the labour force statistics, it would sort of make you think, oh, look, the labour demand is pretty stagnant in agriculture, not necessarily on that growth trajectory that you might see in other sectors. But when you look underneath those statistics, there's massive changes going on where the proportion of people needing to be employed in jobs is increasing, whereas the number of owner-operators, family farms are getting larger, is declining. And so you're getting actually a large demand for professionals, for others to work in these systems. So one is that knowledge out there about the enormous opportunities and jobs and careers in the sector, when some of the stats and what you hear in the media doesn't reflect that. And so that's a major challenge for industries as they try to show what these jobs and careers are to perhaps an audience that's just tuned out. And definitely having done that inquiry through 2020, when Melbourne was mainly in lockdown for most of the year, we got to hear about the impacts and emerging impacts from COVID for the sector. So on one hand, it was positive in that this was a sector that was identified as essential. You know, just like we think differently of our supermarket workers now, you know, essential services. Definitely people understood this sector now is really important and essential. And the other side was just with the shutting of borders, and similar to what Anthony said, now the huge shortages in all levels of the sector is a big challenge right now.
You paint the agriculture sector certainly in a way that I think you're right. A lot of the public don't see that that professionalism, those high-level jobs, and that consolidation of family farms leading to much larger, more corporate sort of farming enterprises. It's interesting, in some ways you've each touched on the issue of perception of your sectors. You know, yours was, you know, how it's been seen as a low-paid, perhaps low-skilled often sector. Anthony talked about that perception of, you know, accountants often being sort of men and, you know, maybe a little staid and not the dynamism that we see in the industry and the changes that are happening. And Kim, we know the energy sector, you know, often struggles from those tensions, sort of politically, environmentally. I'm interested, and I'll come back to you, Ruth. Do you see that the sector is one that will always be in flux? Is this an unusual period of time from a labour point of view? And are there things, I guess, that will settle, that you can see a natural settling occurring in the near to medium future?
Gee, it's a really great question. One of the challenges with the sector, but you know, whether it's really just this sector, but it is volatility in the external environment. And so it is with not just seasons and weather and climate, but pricing and exposure to international markets and prices received. You know, water policy and water allocation. There is just so much volatility in the agricultural sector and the system. And so on one hand, there's always going to be these challenges. So particularly in exposed sectors. And how that plays out in workforce is in an individual sort of farm business, there's not necessarily that scope around retention, the retention piece that Anthony talked about, where unless you have something operating at a regional level, you often have a core workforce, and then you have a workforce that can be more flexible to be able to cope with some of the volatility in markets and pricing and season, etc. And so this causes a great challenge for retaining people and skills. And there's been some really innovative approaches to do that. But I sort of, to answer your question, I suppose I see this volatility always causing sort of dynamism in sort of workforce, demand. Definitely, it's getting more skilled because of the role of technology. And definitely what it shows is you need these long-term strategic efforts to secure a workforce because of some of this. But it's a real challenge that people have to get around, the industry has to get its head around regarding retention and development.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Kim, I'll come back to you and talking about that volatility and some of the market pressures that Anthony and Ruth have referred to around demand for high quality talent. And that need for some flexibility in managing both that constant workforce and perhaps the ability to move people and the timing of when they come in and out of employment with you. Can you tell us a bit more about some of those employment challenges and how the sector's responding to the sort of volatility in the environment and the sector and how that's impacting on your staffing?
Yeah, so there's probably a couple of components that are challenges, and because our industry has a lot of components to it, I'll talk to a few that are quite prevalent at this point in time. One is that we're shifting, the industry is shifting the need of the type of the capabilities they need. So electrical engineers are obviously something that we need a lot of. However, there's also a need for digital professionals and data scientists that work very closely with those engineers, and also for those engineers to have capabilities in those other areas as well. So for us as an organisation, from the labour market perspective, we're well known in the industry for electrical engineers and the great graduate programs that we have, and likewise with other energy sectors. When it comes to those new areas around data scientists and digital professionals, we're competing in a market that is very competitive at the moment, and from a regional perspective, it's really hard to. We're a regionally based company all across Queensland. But also we have some rigour that surrounds our enterprise arrangements and what we can pay people when we're competing with organisations such as Amazon and Google. That starts to become a bit harder when those organisations are more have some different attractiveness to the likes of Energy Queensland, but also are able to probably offer quite a lot more. So that's probably one of the challenges. The other challenge is that we do have a workforce in the energy industry where the skills and capabilities are going to shift into areas where we're going to have to potentially reskill people. So, for example, diesel generators that we would probably normally use in some of our remote areas will become less and less. So the skills and capabilities and the people that we've needed in the past to be able to perform tasks for that, we can't just say, oh, no, thank you anymore, but how do we pivot and reskill or repurpose people who come from that particular capability background into the newer areas such as the battery technology. So there's a piece around we're needing demand in one area, but we're also reducing the other. So how do we get that right balance across those different pieces, whilst at the same time not just removing a whole lot of people with really great skill sets? How do you pivot those capabilities to something else as well? So, and that even includes that data scientists and digital professionals as well. In relation to the sector more broadly, I think we will be in a bit of a state of flux for a period of time, and it's a lot of the unknown at this point. I often refer to it as trying to build planes in the sky. So we're sort of trying to understand what's going on now, but also building for the future. As Ruth had mentioned, you need to have those longer term strategic directions and planning in place, but at the same time, the ability to pivot and change and be agile in your planning along the way, because it is a fairly unknown once you start to go too far in the future.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to the issue of reskilling a little later. I hope we'll have time. I'm going to pause for a moment though and encourage the audience to post questions through the Q&A function. You also have the ability to vote up questions that you're keen to see answered. And I must remember and not get too carried away in this conversation. I must remember that we'll return to audience questions towards the end of this. So if there are particular things that you'd like to ask of an individual panel member or of the panel in general, please do put them in the Q&A function. Anthony, Kim referred to some of the challenges. You opened the conversation about the demand for talent and the competition that that your sector faces getting good quality talent. And I imagine that's not only talent for people who want to pursue a career in accounting, but it's those broader range of services that meet the needs of the accounting sector. We've heard about the challenges of getting regional staffing, and also I guess that competition from maybe what might be seen as more prestigious or, you know, sort of sexy brands around, you know, Amazon, those very tech focused. I'm just going to ask if someone else has their microphone open, you might just close it. Thank you. Anthony, where do you see that competition coming from for you? Is it specifically around getting accountants, or is it those broader roles that are meeting the needs of the accounting sector?
I think it's a really good question, Lara, and you know, I think it's not being so blink and think it's just that piece around accounting. It is the broader, you know, the broader ecosystem in which we sort of live and work within. That's where we definitely see that level of competition coming from. If we think about it and we think, okay, the accounting profession, there's a number of skills that, you know, can make a great accountant. Those skills are so transferable across every area. You know, if we're going back to seeing discussions that sort of Kim and Ruth have talked around their sectors, I mean, the individuals there, be it sort of engineering individuals, the skill set lends itself extremely well to that of accountant. So there's that competition there as to, you know, how can we secure that this is an industry that you might want to consider, and showing how your skill set can really transfer and make you a fantastic finance professional. We can look through, and I know the chat there from Kim around that impact of technology, and we're thinking about the Amazons of this world, and absolutely, where have we seen the growth in that, you know, overall accounting ecosystem? A lot of that software as a service, and we've seen organisations such as MyOb, Xero coming through and seeing how can they support the individuals and businesses through the use of that software information element. So all these sort of factors are definitely underpinned in as to, okay, you know, why would I sort of go forward and continue sort of my career in this technical field, whereas my skills are extremely transferable into a range of other business areas? That's definitely been a big piece. What we see sort of more within that sector is, let's say traditionally, and we go back and we think, well, you know, your typical graduate sort of moving through their career might want to go to that, you know, accountancy firm. Overall goal would be, I'm going to work hard here, and in 10, 15 years time, I'll reach that partnership goal. And, you know, now as we look at that sort of the new generation of individuals coming through and thinking, actually, you know, is that where I want to be? What's my passions? What's my purpose? Do I really want to go through and do 15 years of hard work to become a partner? Or actually, are there other routes in which we want to go through? And that's where we see a lot of people sort of moving, gaining that general skill set. So, okay, accounting's a great basis for me, but I'm going to move off because I want to be an entrepreneur through there. So we're seeing that sort of loss in industry, you know, loss of sort of skills out there. You're seeing the loss from those typical accountant firms to go into, you know, into broader commerce and industry, be it becoming more around that focus of CFOs, you know, finance managers out of there, which is obviously ensuring that there's a change now into how does that typical accounting firm work? What does progression, what does career development look like over that side? All in that aim to think, how can we ensure that we do retain talent? Well, again, that focus around, you know, that social and the ability to have an impact on society. All elements that are thinking with that war for, you know, that war for talent. You know, why do you want to come to me? Well, actually, this is how you can have an impact on broader society, which is a lot of what we're seeing within the sector now, is not just think about the impact you have on your client, but that impact more broadly to be more akin to what you see out there in that wider ecosystem. So for me, that's where it is. It's more a consistent piece of going, the competitors are from all different angles in there. It's more about that individual skill set, which is so transferable in this day and age, and how best can we ensure that we focus on that element of purpose and alternative career pathways within organisations to help support them.
That's really interesting, Anthony. I can really easily see how people who have qualified within the accounting space can be attracted into different sectors. I'm really curious what the accounting sector is doing to attract people in that might have qualified in a different discipline. So how are you counteracting that sort of ebb and flow process? And I'm particularly interested then how that relates to qualifications. So are you expecting people to come in with a 3-year undergraduate degree and then their CPA on top? Or are there ways to enter the sector coming from a different industry and sort of topping up with a key set of skills?
No, I think you touched upon that is a very topical piece at the moment, and that's where a lot of my time's been spent over the past few months, being those conversations as to what does that alternative pathways into the profession look like. And rightly, you've seen sort of within Australia, and if I talk for the CA ANZ pathways, the introduction of a foundations program whereby, let's say, students who have not done an accredited accounting degree can go through a range of 12 different modules to build that skill set up to the required level to start that CA program. But what we're looking for, and I think what that nirvana state will be in the future, if we look at countries such as the UK, whereby we'll have students at university doing a music degree who then go forth to do become accountants. And I think absolutely that's the way in which we're seeing and the way in which we're working through around that. If I look to New Zealand, for instance, there's pathways there for individuals who are working in finance, accounting related jobs to actually transition and transfer and start that sort of CA journey through like an accounting technician's program. I think these are all options that the profession is looking for. I know that from the conversations we've been having recently, lots of employers are thinking about actually how they build that broader pool of individuals. Rightly you said, how do I get that person who's done an engineering degree to think I want to come across and do that? And that's where a lot of the work that I'm doing is sort of taking place, is around that, and also looking a little more earlier on in that sort of education journey back to that high school level. Okay, what's that alternative route for, maybe it's not going through university, but how could I leave from high school, year 12, and have that career, gain that professional qualification to allow that ever increase in development through my career, and not be going, okay, you don't have that designation because you don't have a degree, it means you will reach this level. So all topical issues that are being looked at, and I think there's going to be a great degree of change around there in the coming years.
That's great, thank you. Ruth, coming back to the agriculture sector, which, as we started by saying, is such a broad and diverse sector. It's not just about those people that physically touch the land, it's the agribusiness, it's the supply chain that's into the sector. Where are the priorities in terms of developing capacity for your sector? Where are you seeing that the competition is either taking people who would traditionally have come into the sector, that might be people who grew up on the land perhaps and might normally have been expected to continue in through the sector. Where are you seeing the real challenges at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And I was going to comment on what Anthony said there, because we've got a program at the uni at the moment that I'm have built with others to give an example. So it seems that everybody does want engineers and data scientists at the moment, and so but also that understanding each other's disciplines part. So we've tried to wrap this up a little bit by having an industry partner, which happens to be, broadacre grain growers in northern Victoria. There's the agriculture faculty and there's the engineering school, and the engineering school has, data scientists, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, the water, and all of that. And we've just established a program that in the curriculum, I suppose, the project, that there's a minor project or there's a team project. And it's taking, especially from the engineering area, with the ag people to the area, working on projects that relate more to the agricultural sector challenges and issues. Now, we face the same issue. It's like, well, what students want to do that? Because they all want to do a project in one of the exciting sectors like energy. But we've worked hard to, there are students actually quite interested. It's a bit novel, you know, and they want to do something that has an impact in the industry. And so we've now got building groups where there are engineering students going and doing these projects, but the key thing that we're looking at is, does this influence their career decision making and their thoughts? Because they're on the trajectory of wanting to go, I'm either going to work for that energy firm, or I'm going to work on some amazing project, or I'm going to work for Google in their data science area. And so we're trying to sort of bundle this up a bit. It's one of the, how do we attract people from outside with the different sets of skills? So that's definitely an example of what's trying to be done at the university end and at the industry end, to give people these experiences and help change the way they think perhaps about the sector. So that's definitely one area, and that's really around the precision agriculture, digital agriculture is the words that are, or terms that are used in the sector, bringing in expertise from different disciplines. The other, I suppose, a combination of challenge, but also to show the diversity of jobs and careers, by way of example, is that some of dairy farms in Victoria, particularly in northern Victoria, where there's big climate and water challenges, are moving into completely different farming systems. And this challenges not only the owner-operators, but also the staffing and skills required. And so what's happening is there's now cropping specialists, and that's machinery, and then there's herd management specialists, and that's really those people that really want to work with animals and really enjoy that aspect. But around that is this agribusiness sector. So to run these systems and operate these systems, you need great business consulting services. You need nutritionists, animal nutritionists. You need technical waste management specialists, and at high calibre. We need building, construction, design people. And we need how to interpret all this data that's coming from these systems and then improve performance. So you can see where in the whole sector, the challenge is to actually bring the expertise that is there and is developing to the sector, and that it is about that we can offer, the sector can offer career progression, and people can come in and out. And some might be able to live in regional areas and be supporting from a distance. Yeah, so that's just a bit of a taste for some of actually what's happening right now around what Anthony was talking about there.
I think you've picked up on one of the questions, and I'm looking at the audience questions that have started to come through. And one of our first questions is a graduate with a double degree from seemingly diverse sectors such as accounting and agriculture attractive to employers? And I think what you've shown is that understanding where the different disciplines both merge and have a role in the sector is really important. Is it as simple as double degrees? That is, everyone should have an ag component and then an engineering component, or an accounting component, or a nutrition component? Or is it more tailored to individual parts of the sector, being very sort of focused and developing their own sort of niche capacity?
Yeah, if I just kick off there, look, definitely, you know, double degree, they're still there and definitely highly valued, particularly in the agriculture space, because we have business is, you know, an important aspect. It's a science business, it's a STEAM sort of area. Look, Melbourne is a bit different because we've got the breadth undergrad degrees where people can sort of have that diversity. But I think in general, even it doesn't have to be through that degree, but that experience, whether that's internships and placements and projects, and that exposure, and maybe picking up some subjects if possible. Yeah, I think that's, again, it's the individual. I think what Anthony and Kim were talking about, that individual, that transferable skills, it's a way to start thinking about it as a student, I think.
I would love to get into the conversation around how we do the reverse, rather than a brain drain from regional areas into city areas, how we drain the brain from city areas to bring them back to regional areas. We certainly know sometimes getting our students from our metropolitan campuses to consider working in a regional area is a challenge. Do you have any quick pointers on how you've been able to see that succeed?
Yeah, look, a third of our agriculture students are city students. Because they're coming because they go, hang on, I want to work in this food area. I want to work at the pointy end of climate change. Secondly, we do have a farm campus, a 2,500 hectare farm campus, and we've put a semester there, and we get nearly half the cohort to go that do go there. So and definitely having what you call metro or city people that sign up for this is then the way that we start changing perceptions as well, and have those debates about the future food systems and things. So look, I'm not saying it's easy, and definitely there's a standoff with wanting to live, but this is where the whole regional development piece comes in. So what's attractive about regions, and I'm sure Kim would be saying this about the Queensland work. I work a bit with Queensland as well, that, you know, it's really making those regional areas attractive, and that those, you're not missing out when you come there, you know, and that's the case. So
yeah. Absolutely. Certainly as a regional university, we're well aware of those tensions of how we build those local workforces to meet local needs, as well as bringing people in where we need to from metropolitan areas. Anthony, I'm going to move further into the questions, and one of the questions from our audience is, there was a mention of higher level positions that often come with requirements of 5+ years of experience, and I can't recall whether this was one of your comments, so apologies if it was someone else on the panel. How have you given any consideration to how to leverage graduates who would be willing to accept lower wages but may not have the expected experience? So really, how are you balancing that professional people wanting to come into a well-paid profession but maybe not having the qualifications, and trying to bring people in at a lower level?
No, I understand. And I think, look, if we look at one thing that the pandemic has brought, and we talked about that war for talent, we probably are seeing a lot less of this going, you must have that 5 years experience in this level. There has definitely been a lot more openness amongst those organisations that, you know, we at CA work with. They go, well, actually, we've got someone here and we can bring them in. Okay, they're great. They're going to take that sort of lower level wage, but it's more around that capacity to learn and develop. That's probably the key piece that we've been seeing. And, you know, for me, if we look back, it used to be, for that, you know, transition to graduate roles, what's the key thing you'd be looking for? We can't look at the work experience, is that ability to sort of learn, develop, you know, see that element of potential to grow in role. What we are seeing now is definitely those organisations looking at those more experienced hires and saying, okay, they haven't got that depth of experience that we ideally would want, but actually we've got someone here who still can be sort of nurtured through there, is looking at a focus of lifelong learning. You know, we talked about, and I think, you know, both there, Kim and Ruth, talk about that individual, that transferable skills, that is definitely becoming a lot more important than, you know, having that specific technical knowledge. You know, absolutely, as we look at the pace of change within that accounting sector and different roles coming up, where it's like, okay, if we look back, do we really have sort of individuals who are focused on enterprise, you know, resource planning, systems, risk controls, qualities around there to deal with blockchain in the past? No, we didn't if we go back, you know, 6 years. So for me, those pieces are coming through, and, you know, a lot more focus on those career changes. One of the, you know, fantastic things I've seen within that accounting sector is there's been more of an appreciation and ability for firms to work with organisations. For instance, one called Maturius that looks at those sort of career changes who are coming from, you know, diverse areas, but have some fantastic skill sets, which might mean, you know what, they wouldn't come in as that first level graduate. They've got a bit more of that sort of life skills, that transferable skills, and it's more around, okay, how can that organisation come across and teach some of those technical discipline through that? So we've seen a lot of that. The same thing, if I look through to Australia Post, for instance, another organisation, a great bit of work there around taking those individuals at that sort of mid-career level, reskilling. And that to me is the one big piece I'm seeing from there. I personally hate those job ads that say 5+ years, 10+ years of experience on there, because it's not about the years of experience. It really is around that quality of the work that someone's done. What have they got involved in? And for me, that's definitely coming through now, as we see lots of organisations pivot around that.
We, like many universities, I know Ruth at Melbourne also is developing a large portfolio of micro-credentials and short courses and those just-in-time skills that people go, oh, I need to know about XYZ. How can I learn that quickly? You mentioned often organisations are training up people coming in from other sectors. What do you see as the role or perhaps the credibility of micro-credentials in the accounting profession to sort of give those just-in-time skills for people transferring in?
No, I think there is, absolutely place for that. And if I look through at CA and a number of those professional development modules that we have that offer more of that micro-credential feel, and absolutely, if I'm looking at what does that future of learning look like, going from that tertiary education provider, doing your 4-year degree into organisations, we see a lot now around those organisations and professional bodies thinking, what exactly you said there, Laura. What are those just-in-time courses? How can we provide someone with that nice, short, sharp, be it 8 weeks, virtual insight into X area to support you with a specific nature of your work? That is what we're going to see a lot of discussion sort of taking place. And I know internally within sort of my membership body, they are discussions that are being had. How can we work with universities, with employers to redefine, what are some of those sort of key elements? How can we bring that in? If I look out there now, one of the big parts at the top of my head would be the focus around business and ethics. And that's something that we heard a lot from employers going, how can we ensure that our people have this front and foremost centre of mind? What is that quick, short, sharp piece to really instill this? And therefore looking to sort of work with sort of university partners, with employers going to design a course around this and thinking, how can we bring this out and ensure that it's there available on demand for individuals to undertake? So absolutely elements coming through.
I can just imagine all the CQ people madly noting business and ethics, accounting profession. We'll be on to you soon, I promise. Kim, I'm really interested from your perspective, both that issue of how the sector sees the ability to bring people in who don't have energy experience specifically, and I know it's quite a porous sector. Engineers can often transfer across, other professions can transfer across. What you're doing as a sector or as an employer to attract people in who might not traditionally have seen a path for themselves in energy. And again, that question of what's the role of those just-in-time qualifications for sort of augmenting skills to get people up to speed quickly?
Yeah, so I probably start back to how do we attract to our sector, and it probably comes back a little bit back to that regionality piece as well. We do need engineers in some of our major locations in Cairns and Townsville and Rockhampton, all of those major regional centres. And we've been on a bit of a journey, and I think one of the key elements that we have understood ourselves as an organisation, I think the industry more broadly, with some of my counterparts across the country, is you do have to start earlier on. I think we talked about, I think Anthony might have mentioned high school, but it's even going back to the primary school and showing them there's a future within the energy industry or STEM or STEAM subjects in general, particularly when it comes to regional areas. Also, we're really passionate about those elements of bringing in diverse people, both from a gender perspective, from a neurodiversity perspective, from a First Nations perspective. So you have to start that pipeline early on. You have to get involved and work with industry and other partners that are working in that space, because it is hard to price someone out of the southeast corner of Queensland to come and live in Rockhampton, where I am. It's a little bit of a change from a cultural perspective for them. So we've sort of taken an approach of engaging locally, regionally, building that pipeline in those regions, and you're more likely to have a retention in those areas. So that's probably one of the things that we've kind of realised at this point in time. However, in saying that, with the future of work and the way in which COVID has sort of forced us to work remotely, a lot of our work can be done from anywhere across the state, and I'm sure it's the same in other states as well, but the housing market in Queensland is a bit ridiculous at the moment, and it's skyrocketed, and that's much because people can work from anywhere now. We were a fairly geographic dispersed and able to work remotely, but the way that work is happening is anybody can work from anywhere. So we are starting to see, hopefully in the future, that we may not have as many challenges, or people will be more likely to move into those regional areas. One, because it might be a bit cheaper than the southeast corner, but also it's a different lifestyle, and then the ability to work from wherever across the country is more viable. Onto the qualifications and people not quite having experience in the industry. For us, when we recruit through our graduate program, we look for a mix of both. We do support quite a lot of undergraduate students, particularly in our engineering degrees, to get that mandatory industry experience. We also want to make sure that we're giving students in the communities that opportunity to get time in the industry. So where our candidate pools come from, we often have had some time with us or other energy industry. But when we're recruiting, and the successful candidates for our graduate programs are coming from a mix of both, where they haven't had necessarily experience with the energy industry, might be with someone else, but also those that have had experience with us. And I think from a perspective for us as an industry, it's important to have a mix of both. Otherwise, you're going to get much of the same. You're not going to get that innovation, different thinking, bringing in experiences and ideas from other industry is really important. And then probably to that other part that you asked, Lara, around the upskilling or the skilling, the micro-credential element. My observation is there's, yes, in the future and now even, we do need that micro-credentialing and that ability to upskill. So we'll bring in our graduates, and there might be an engineer as an example. However, we will also want to give them micro-credentials and those future skills around data analytics, data science, digital elements. And because we don't necessarily know what that is yet, we need to make sure that we're getting on top of that. But also, in addition to the credentials element, the other part is getting experience or exposing and exposure into different elements. And we've even gone down the pathway of where we I like to call it, bouncing our graduates out into another industry that we're collaborating with, where we can't build that capability internally. So we're giving them like a rotation, some time with another organisation that gives them sort of an injection of capability and skills for a period of time that they can then come back and utilise in the organisation and potentially follow, build and share with others. So and that's largely because some of that micro-credential that we need doesn't quite exist yet. So we're relying on organisations that have that capability to do it for us.
Certainly sounds like an amazing opportunity for graduates to be able to step out, go to another industry, come back and have that job security and career progression. We are almost out of time, and I just would really quickly like an answer, and I'll ask each of you before we wrap up. You've talked about COVID and the fact that people can work anywhere at the moment, and that's great when you're an established worker and you know your role in the organisation and the organisational or sector culture. What do you need from graduates coming out of university to make them employable in this dispersed online COVID environment that you're maybe not seeing? What's that one extra thing that we could work with our graduates to give them at this point in time? And I'll just ask for a brief answer. And Kim, I'll start with you.
So that's a good question. I'm not sure it's not what we're not seeing, but if I can probably share with you and my view on what makes a good candidate is, yes, you've got your qualifications and we've got some really intelligent people applying for our roles. However, what makes somebody stand out and what brings them to the top of the pack as such is that the three key areas around, yes, their academic results are an element. The other parts is around some experience, so getting some industry experience of some sort, or experience out in the working world. And that helps to build capabilities around some of those fundamentals around communication and teamwork. The third one is the discretionary activities, and that's both from getting involved in communities, whether it be within university or your studies or externally, and also that helps to demonstrate your willingness and ability and your motivation as a corporate citizen as such, but also there's shows that you're continuously wanting to learn and do and try new things, because learning agility is a really key capability for all of us moving forward, is that ability as things adapt and change so quickly, and we need to be able to learn and adapt and continue to kind of grow as we're going along. So I hope that answered the question, Lara.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Kim. Marvellous. And Ruth, and I am aware you might need to step away early, Ruth, so I'm going to come to you.
Sure, that's fine. Yes, agree with that. The ag sector still is very much a place-based sector, because with processing and also on farm, and so there is often a lot of competition sort of, in regional areas. But yeah, definitely coping with crisis, being able to adapt is and being able to show that. But definitely people, because I suppose the agriculture and food sector has attracted a lot of technical people and a lot of expertise there. But if you've got the edge, is the people part. Working in teams, being approachable, solving problems with people, not high conflict. Working on those people skills are always highly valued in the sector.
That's marvellous, thank you. And Anthony, over to you. How do we need to give you or help develop different graduates or add an extra layer of skills to work with the profession in this time?
Absolutely. If I look at sort of two parts of the question there, if I firstly look at, right, what is it about those new grads as they start that work life in this virtual scenario? And I think, grads are very well equipped for, you're in an office, starting work around there, fantastic. But it's more around that engagement in this virtual mean. And a lot of what I'm hearing is, okay, how do you connect with individuals in this virtual environment? We talk about sort of large group calls, let's say, utilising like Zoom platforms. And the amount of times I've seen sort of new grads just I'm there doing presentations to them, and it's like, okay, cameras are off. It's just like names on the screen, and it's sort of not building that level of connection. So there's elements there around like, how can you ensure you can build connections in this virtual world? How best do you use those sort of, chat functions, be it on Google Messenger, Teams, the rest of it, to keep engaged? How do you sort of drive self when you don't have like your co-workers, your managers sort of physically being next to you to go, okay, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. That level of self-management are big things that I think there's probably a little bit more we can do in preparing new grads for that world of work in this COVID land. Looking back at what are some of those skills as you go through that recruitment process, and I absolutely agree with what Kim and Ruth have been saying there. To me, the biggest thing that a lot of employers talk about, and I come from a background of being a graduate recruiter as well, is that element of resilience and that ability to actually go and show that perseverance of how you overcome obstacles. And it's not a case of actually having to get through to having that right answer. It's more about that story of what an individual did, what's that learning that they gained from that, and how can they take that learning and put into practice on their sort of next attempts at doing things. That element around, I think it was exactly as Ruth mentioned there, around that people and that relationships of how do we go about building those trusted relationships are going to be key. It's great, and I think one of the fantastic things at university is that ability to sort of learn and, obviously become, I guess, that rote learning of being sort of book smart through there. But how is it now around actually being able to ask the right questions and really listening to what individuals are saying to allow you to think about, right, what is that question that I need to ask? All that element of emotional intelligence, also big things that I've been looking for in the sector as we move forward. So all in all, transferable skills, the biggest things out there for me.
What a marvellous roundup from the three of you. And I think if there's anything that graduates who are completing a degree at the moment will be able to demonstrate at the end of this is resilience and adaptability. And we talk a lot to our students about it's a difficult time, but what an amazing extra kit of skills they are developing, studying through this changeable period. Everyone, please let me thank our panel today, Professor Ruth Nettle, Anthony Tachi, Kim Cassidy. You've been a marvellous panel, and I suspect this conversation could have gone on for another hour if we had had the time. For our audience, I hope you've enjoyed the snapshots from cross sectors that you heard today. Please take a few minutes to scan the QR code that's on your screen. Give us some feedback on this session. We do the Festival of Change as an annual event, and we want to keep building on the success from year to year. There are another week and a half of activities under the Festival of Change. I encourage you to go and have a look at others that might be of interest to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And again, thank you so much to our expert panel for contributing your knowledge to our discussion around the future of work. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.